Every morning and evening, the old stone bridge over the river hummed with the quiet rhythm of life in the city. It was an unassuming structure, worn by time, but with a charm that captivated passers-by. The water below whispered secrets as it flowed lazily toward the sea, and the leaves of the nearby trees danced in the breeze. Among the crowds that hurried across the bridge, two souls, unbeknownst to each other, were always on the verge of meeting. Emma and Daniel were two strangers leading lives that somehow mirrored one another. Emma, a graphic designer who loved quiet moments with her sketchbook, crossed the bridge every morning to get to her favorite cafe before work. Daniel, an architect with a penchant for photography, walked the same route, but slightly later, his camera always in tow to capture the play of light on the river. They crossed the same bridge at different times, day in and day out, their paths never quite aligning. Emma noticed the beauty of the bridge through her sketches, while Daniel admired it through his lens. But neither had any idea that their lives had been running parallel for years. The bridge was more than just a passage. It was a sanctuary. Emma would often pause at the halfway point, her eyes tracing the flowing water below as she sipped her coffee. On certain evenings, Daniel would stop at the same spot, leaning over the railing to watch the sunset reflect on the river's surface. On one particularly golden evening in early autumn, Emma stood on the bridge, sketching the view. As she focused on capturing the perfect line of the arches beneath her feet, Daniel approached from the opposite direction, his camera clicking as he documented the warm light glowing through the trees. He saw her from afar, a figure completely engrossed in her art. For a fleeting moment, he considered stopping, perhaps to admire her work or strike up a conversation. But just as he hesitated, the wind caught Emma's hair, and she hurriedly tucked her sketchbook away, vanishing into the crowd before Daniel could speak. It was the closest they had ever come to meeting. A missed glance, a moment that could have altered their paths, but life continued on its steady course, keeping them as strangers for now. Days passed, and autumn slowly turned the leaves a bright amber. On one particularly crisp evening, fate decided it had waited long enough. Emma, running late after a long day, found herself crossing the bridge much later than usual. The air was cool and the street lamps cast a warm, inviting glow on the cobblestones. As she walked, she noticed a man with a camera standing at the exact spot where she often stopped. His focus was intense as he tried to capture the beauty of the evening light. Without thinking, Emma slowed her pace, watching him work with quiet admiration. There was something familiar about the way he stood, as if she had seen him before, but she couldn't quite place it. At that moment, Daniel lowered his camera, and their eyes met for the very first time. There was a brief pause before he smiled, a shy yet warm expression that invited conversation. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" he asked, his voice gentle. "It is," Emma replied, surprised at how natural it felt to speak to him. "I see you like to capture it in photos." "And you like to sketch," Daniel said, glancing at the pencil and small sketchbook she held loosely in her hand. "I've noticed you a few times before." Emma's heart fluttered, not because he had seen her, but because she realized that she had noticed him too. All those quiet moments spent crossing the bridge, how close they had come to meeting, and yet how far apart they had remained. That evening, what started as small talk turned into a deeper conversation. They spoke about their love for the bridge, how they both found solace in its presence, and how it had become a part of their daily routines. The more they shared, the more they realized how much their lives had run in parallel. Emma learned that Daniel had been walking the same route for years, capturing moments of beauty in the city with his camera, while she had been sketching those same moments with her pencil. They had unknowingly been living side by side, connected by the bridge that had been waiting for them to finally meet. As the conversation flowed, the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving them bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. There was a kind of magic in the air, a serendipity that neither of them could deny. "Do you believe in fate?" Daniel asked, his eyes reflecting the warmth of the evening. Emma thought for a moment before replying, "I used to think that fate was just coincidence, but now I'm not so sure." They smiled at each other, the quiet understanding between them growing stronger. From that day forward, Emma and Daniel made a habit of crossing the bridge together. Morning walks turned into shared coffees, and evening strolls became conversations filled with laughter and understanding. As the autumn leaves fell, their bond deepened, and with every step they took, they grew closer. One evening, after months of shared moments, Daniel planned something special. He brought Emma to the bridge, the place where their story had begun, and as they stood there under the twinkling lights, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, silver charm shaped like the arches of the bridge. "This bridge brought us together," Daniel said softly, taking her hand. "It was our connection even when we didn't know it. And now I want to build a new bridge with you, a bridge to our future." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she realized the depth of his words. With a joyful smile, she nodded, her heart full of love and gratitude. And so, under the same bridge that had once kept them apart, Emma and Daniel sealed their promise to build a life together, one filled with serendipity, love, and the quiet magic of everyday moments shared. Years later, Emma and Daniel would still walk across the bridge every day. It had become their special place, a reminder of the serendipitous evening when two strangers, living parallel lives, finally found their way to each other. The old stone bridge had witnessed countless footsteps over the years, but none were as meaningful as theirs. Their love had blossomed in the simplest of moments, a shared glance, a quiet conversation, and the understanding that sometimes fate has a way of bringing the right people together when the time is just right. And every time they crossed that bridge, they would smile, knowing that it had always been more than just a passage. It had been the bridge between them, the one that connected their hearts.